If I spent over $3,000 in a month while living in Boston, then I wonder what my spending would be like if I moved to Texas.
Hey guys, my name is Mike. Welcome to the channel where I talk about all things related to saving money. Chances are, if you're watching this right now, then you've already seen my video from last week when I showed you guys how I spent my money from the time when I used to live in Boston. And if you haven't seen last week's video, then don't worry. I'll throw a link down in the description box below and you can check that out later. And today is going to be a similar subject to last week, but instead of talking about Boston, today's topic is going to be focused on Texas. I'm going to be revealing to you the most I've ever spent in a month while living in Texas. So let's switch over to my bank account and see how I was spending my money. So the bank that I use is called Navy Federal Credit Union, and they have a bunch of great deals and products that are exclusive to military members and their families. One of the best perks about this bank is they will reimburse you up to $20 worth of ATM fees per month. And that includes ATMs that are located overseas. And so you could be gambling at a casino located in Macau and not have to worry about the expensive ATM fees associated with withdrawing your money. But if you follow my channel, then you shouldn't be gambling in the first place because gambling does not equal saving money. But besides my bank reimbursing me ATM fees, they have this really cool feature called Spending Tracker, which essentially is a budgeting tool that tracks your spending. So anytime I spend money on something, it gets tracked as an expense, and then it gets placed into one of these generic categories.
Wowee!
I think this is a great way to visually see where your money is going, so you can identify what areas of your spending you can cut out of your budget. And if we use last week's video as an example, I had no idea that I was spending over $400 worth of takeout in a month back in 2019. This is something I easily could have avoided by buying groceries instead of ordering delivery. And I think if I started using my bank's budgeting tool a little bit sooner, then maybe these fancy charts would have reminded me to slow down a bit on my discretionary spending. But regardless, let's fast forward to the months when I was living in Texas.
Yeehaw!
And we can see what I was spending my money on. Alright, so my bank creates these charts based on 6-month increments. And based on the time period shown here, the only months when I was physically located in Texas was in June and July of 2020. I was fortunate enough to have a summer internship, which was originally scheduled to be in Washington, D.C. But given the circumstances of what was going on in the world at that time, my internship eventually moved to be 100% online. So I used this as an opportunity to save some money and decided to move in with a girl that I was dating at the time to Corpus Christi, Texas. And so based on my 2 months of living in Texas, it should be pretty easy to figure out which of these months I spent more money in. And it's obvious that I spent more money in June than I did in July. But one thing that I think is worth mentioning is I did prepay my rent in the month of June. My girlfriend at the time had a 1-bed, 1-bath apartment with all the utilities included for a price of $900 per month. So we ended up splitting that $900 between the both of us. And so I paid her $1,350 in June for 3 months of future rent. But in reality, I only stayed in Texas for 2 out of the 3 months. So eventually she reimbursed me $450 for the month of August when I moved out. And now that you have some more background of my living situation from over the summer, we can next adjust this chart to reflect my prepaid rent for the month. So June should be about $1,300 and July should be about $1,100. And so even after adjusting my expenses to reflect my prepaid rent, we can see that June is still the month where I spent the most money. And before we dive into my individual transactions for this month, I just want to point out that the monthly cost of living in Corpus Christi, Texas is about $1,536. So it looks like even my most expensive month of living in Corpus Christi was still about $208 below what the average person was spending to live there. So I guess the takeaway here is to move into a 1-bedroom apartment with your significant other and then just split the rent. So there you go. You definitely can save money no matter what city you're living in. And so when we click on the month where I spent the most money, it looks like my spending for this time period is broken up into 3 different categories. We have finance, bills, and entertainment. And I guess we can start at the top and take a look at the finance category, which represents about 98% of my overall spending for this time period. Wow, it looks like my only transactions for this month came from Venmo. And for those who aren't familiar, Venmo is basically a digital wallet where you can transfer money from one person to another using your phone. And if you're wondering why I have all these Venmo transactions, it's because my girlfriend and I put all of our joint expenses onto one credit card to accumulate points. So over the summer, she upgraded her credit card to the Chase Sapphire Reserve card, which offers 3 times the points on travel, groceries, and dining. So instead of putting all of our expenses onto my credit card like we usually do, we just used hers instead.
It's Britney, baby.
And so these 3 Venmo transactions that you see here are all from me reimbursing her for either groceries or dining out at a restaurant. And then this last transaction we already talked about. This is the prepaid rent that should really only be $450 for this month. And so in total for this category, after adjusting for prepaid rent, I spent about $1,287. Moving on to the next category, we can take a look at bills and utilities, which represent about 1.7% of my overall spending for this month. And this one looks pretty straightforward. It looks like this is just a monthly phone bill from Verizon. And one thing I want to mention from last week is my old phone plan from when I used to live in Boston was about $64 per month for 3 gigs of data. And it wasn't until my phone broke when I realized that I was overpaying for my plan. So I ended up going into a Verizon store to buy a new phone. And the employee notified me that my phone plan was outdated and I could get a cheaper option with essentially all the same service as my original plan. And so my phone bill went from about $64 to about $37 per month. And so my advice for everyone watching is to call up your phone plan provider and see if there's any cheaper phone plans available or any applicable discounts you can use. Generally, they're not going to advertise this as they want to keep you locked into a plan that's at a higher rate. But it doesn't hurt to ask. After all, this channel is all about saving money, baby. But anyways, that leaves my overall spending for this category to be about $37. And next up, we can take a look at my final category, which is entertainment, which represents about 0.17% of my overall spending for this month. And it looks like my only expense here for this month is a YouTube purchase. It looks like I rented Lone Survivor on YouTube for about $4. And actually, if we look at my purchase history from YouTube, it looks like I rented a few movies during the month of June. In total, it looks like I spent about $18 on movie rentals from YouTube for this month. I'm guessing that these expenses have already been accounted for in my Venmo transactions that I discussed earlier, so I'm not going to adjust anything here. So that leaves my overall spending for this category to be about $4 for this month. So overall, if we revisit this fancy pie chart, then we know that this 2,228 number is not entirely accurate, as we still need to adjust it for prepaid rent. So after adjusting this number, that would mean that the most money I've spent in a month while living in Corpus Christi, Texas would be about $1,328. And just to give you a comparison, in last week's video, I discussed the most money that I've spent in a month in Boston, which was about $3,224. So that means by moving to Texas, I saved about $1,896. So in a world where teleworking may be the new standard for the way that companies get things done,
I'm teleworking.
Then consider moving to a cheaper part of the country like Texas. You'll be able to drastically lower your expenses while ultimately saving more of your money and getting one step closer towards reaching your financial goals. And anyways, that wraps up this video. I hope you guys enjoyed.
And as always,
Stay frugal, fam.
Hey guys, I just wanted to thank you for watching this video. Be sure to hit the subscribe button right above me and check out my other videos, which you'll have listed on this side of your screen. We'll see you next time, Frugal Fam.